Welcome, welcome, welcome. Again, this is the first edition of Healthy Habits live teaching class through McKee Wellness. And welcome back to those who were here last week. We love y'all. Welcome back, fam. All right. So, as I mentioned at the end of last class, this week we'll be going over the healthy habit of vinegar. Okay? But before we get into it, I would like to do a quick little recap of last week, going over the two healthy habits that we discussed, okay? First one being the order of eating, where we have fiber first, helps with those digestive enzymes in the stomach, slowing down digestion. Then we move on to protein and fat, which are essential for our bodily functions, and also help regulate digestion. And then we move down to starch and sugar, being those simple carbohydrates that we want to make sure that we eat last, okay? And then habit number 2 being savory breakfast, as we choose savory over sweet in the morning, first thing that we eat, or if we have anything sweet in the meal, we preface it for after we consume the savory. Now, I do want to invite you guys here at the beginning of class to raise your hands, ask questions. In WebEx, if you want to type in any comments or questions that you've had in the previous 7 days since we went over that content, or even share any fun recipes or things that you learned during the process. So I want to open that time up right now, and we'll be getting, hopefully, some good feedback from you guys. Oh, great question. So the question was, if you had a white potato, would you qualify it as a starch or a sugar? Well, in this case, if it was a starch or a sugar, we still want to keep it at the bottom of that eating order. So it wouldn't necessarily matter in this case. Because if we remember last week when we drew the line between the OG big three, fiber, protein, and fat, and then starch and sugar underneath, you can mix and match both sides. But if you're eating them all together, you want to make sure you follow that order. Okay? Okay. Question from WebEx? We have a comment from WebEx. Oh, that is awesome. Okay, so we have somebody who doesn't necessarily eat breakfast in the morning, but the savory breakfast option really appealed to her, and she's been rocking out with some veggie omelets. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. So somebody said that usually they just have coffee in the morning, and once they started using the savory breakfast method, they felt a little bit calmer. Their energy levels kind of mellowed out a little bit. So less jitters. So that's awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing. All right. I have some more from WebEx. Okay. So somebody asked if they're eating in the order fiber, protein, and fat, and they wanted to have dessert, but that dessert came 2 hours after. Would it matter eating the dessert in that 2 hours after, or do you have to eat it right after your fiber, protein, and fat? Well, two things. In the method, we always recommend having dessert rather than sweet snacks. However, during today's class, I'm going to show you all a little healthy habit hack to help you when you want to have those little sweet treats. Anything else? Okay, so the question was, this individual loves eating broccoli, but they like sauteing it with teriyaki and red pepper flakes. She wants to know if it is ruining her chance of mitigating glucose spikes. I would say no, ma'am, because of the fiber content, okay? And because you're eating a vegetable in its whole form and not blended up or juiced, okay? So sauces are okay. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have moderation, but you're on the right track. So, great job. Thank you for sharing. All right, another from WebEx. What's up?
What do you think?
Okay, question was about the potato diet. What do I think about it? Well, unfortunately, I haven't done too much research on that, so I have some homework to do. So to answer your question, I will get back to you on that. If you would please share your email with me, I'll make sure to get back to you expeditiously. All right. Anything else? Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys. Love the engagement. All right. So In accordance to what we went over last week, I thought it'd be cool to share with you guys some examples of some of the things that we discussed, some of the questions that we had. All right. So if we're looking at these graphs, first of all, yes, I love pizza too. Okay. If we look at here on the example, we see that eating even just a veggie pizza by itself, the glucose spike is a little large, right? But if we preface that with these green beans, it helps cut that spike in half, all right? So we're still enjoying the things that we love. We're just looking at the order of how we're eating those things, okay? And then we see here eating a sandwich, but prefacing it with kale. And then I remember there was a question about fasting, okay? And the first thing that we eat after a fast. So this is an example of somebody consuming a smoothie after a 14-hour fast versus a savory breakfast after a 14-hour fast. And the difference on there, y'all, is crazy, right? It's pretty crazy. All right. As well as an example of granola, eating that compared to eating that non-spike yogurt bowl that we talked about with the nuts and the seeds and the full-fat yogurt. Okay? One more slide to show y'all with these examples. Okay? We see here when I talked about looking at smoothies as savory instead of sweet and flavoring with fruit, we can see the difference here in eating a full fruit smoothie versus a savory smoothie. Okay? So yes, you can still have fruit in your smoothie. I'm not saying you cannot, right? But if we preface that smoothie, basing it around protein and fat, protein powder, maybe an avocado blend, okay, some nuts or some seeds, it can help mitigate that spike tremendously, okay? And then we see some other examples here as well. And for our cake fans here, look at that. Eating Greek yogurt with your chocolate cake, look at that. That's wild, right? So not saying you can't enjoy your favorite things. Never saying that. We just want to become more aware with the order of how we eat our food, okay? All right. Now, I have something special I want to share with you guys. Okay? This is a testimonial from someone who has actually tested out this method for about a month now. Okay? She happens to be my mentor through the Mentor Me program here at McKee, and I thought it would be cool for her to share her testimony of her experience using the savory breakfast. So I'm going to read this real quick. It's from Miss Jennifer Beagle. It says, I had the opportunity to learn about the glucose revolution from Jonathan last month. I listened to the audiobook, and as someone with a scientist background, Jessie had me incredibly curious with the research and studies presented to support her theories. I embarked on my journey to stabilize my glucose 2 weeks ago by starting my day with a savory breakfast, eating foods in the specified order, and having fat or protein with my carbs. In this time, I've seen a huge difference in my lack of cravings for sweets and even comfort foods to me like pizza and burgers. I have been less hangry when it is about time for my next meal and overall feel more satisfied after each meal. I could never have imagined such simple steps would make such a large impact on my cravings and hunger. All right, first of all, I want to applaud you, Jennifer, for sharing that with us. Hopefully it's encouraging to you guys and enlightening on just how impactful this method can be. All right. One more thing I want to share with you guys before we get into some more content is a reminder of who I am not, a registered dietitian, a doctor, or a scientist. I'm simply here to educate, motivate, and inspire you guys. So everything that I say over the course of these 4 weeks, please test the claims, do research, and create for yourselves a balanced, careful approach to all of your information, okay? Especially nutrition. All right. Let's get into our topic of the week, vinegar, okay? What is vinegar? Well, let's dive into a little bit of science. So, vinegar, yes indeed, is derived from glucose. Isn't that crazy? So the thing that we're trying to help regulate over the course of these 4 weeks, we can actually derive one of our healthy habits from. Okay, how does this happen? It happens through fermentation. Okay, a process that takes several months at a time. Okay, introducing yeast into the glucose molecule and allowing it to grow, right? What happens next? Well, then we introduce the molecule to oxygen. Okay, this oxygen promotes a process called acidification. Why is that important? Because the molecule acetic acid is what we are trying to get from the vinegar. And I'll highlight that in a little bit, okay? All right. Now, vinegar can be derived from different sources. Usually it's a fruit or it's an alcoholic beverage, okay? And again, the alcoholic fermentation of either that beverage or that fruit takes away the alcohol, right? So, what happens next is that depending on what that source is, you get different colors of the vinegar as well as different names of the vinegar, okay? So, if we're thinking about how this works in our body, let's talk about acetic acid. Acetic acid is a very, very powerful agent in breaking down starch and sugar. And as we talked about in week 1, starches and sugars are simple carbohydrates, okay? If our body intakes a lot all at one time, we have our glucose spikes, right? Remember the doorman of insulin getting run over? Okay. We want to make sure that we mitigate that glucose. Second thing, acetic acid also penetrates our muscles and helps them prepare to absorb glucose better, okay? So think about it as a power-up for your body, okay? It helps those muscles absorb glucose and get ready for activity. Doesn't just have to be exercise. Can be daily activity, okay? So it helps power up our muscles, and it also helps trigger what's called a fat-burning mode. Now, I want to be very, very specific here, okay? There are 2 different types of fat in the body. There's the essential and there's the non-essential. The essential fat is called brown fat. It's what covers our internal organs. The non-essential fat is yellow fat or visceral fat, okay? And that's usually what we see on the outside of the body. Okay, so think of vinegar and its acetic acid as helping that process be a little bit more efficient, which is really cool. Okay, and 1 tablespoon of vinegar actually before a meal can reduce a glucose spike by up to 30% and an insulin spike by up to 20%. So just a couple things to note there. Now, when it comes to choosing what kind of vinegar to consume, all vinegar has acetic acid, okay? However, not all vinegar is the same. As you see up here, we do not want to consume cleaning vinegar or weed-killing vinegar. Please hear me. Do not go to the store after today and get you a big old jug of cleaning vinegar, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because there are certain levels of acid in this vinegar, okay? So, when it comes to cleaning vinegar, it's going to go above 6% acidity. When it comes to consumable vinegar, that's not going to be super detrimental to your body, okay, and start dissolving things inside of you. We want to stay between the 4 and the 6% range, okay? And as you see on the screen, we have different types. And as we just discussed, depending on where you get that vinegar from, comes the different names: white wine, red wine, rice vinegar, apple cider vinegar, okay, as well as the colors of those vinegars, okay? All right, now, you don't just have to drink vinegar to get your vinegar in, all right? Although if you do, it is often recommended in this method to use water, okay, to kind of cut the vinegar, all right? You can also use tea to dilute your vinegar. You can also pickle vegetables, if you want to consume your vinegar, okay? Pickles, radishes, beets, etc. You can also make your own salad dressing, which is fun, just using a vinegar and an olive oil, okay? And the reason I say create your own salad dressing instead of use a pre-made salad dressing is because most salad dressings have sugar in them, okay? And when it comes to acetic acid, If we're consuming vinegar with something sweet, it cancels out its properties. We essentially have to prep our body with the vinegar prior to consuming something sweet. Okay? Another awesome thing is if you like to drink mocktails, okay? So not cocktails, mocktails. All right? So if you like a nice, refreshing beverage, you can also get your vinegar in that way. And just a reminder for all those participating in this class, we'll be getting you this glucose method book, which has hundreds of recipes in there, including mocktail recipes, which is fun. Okay? So we can spice it up a little bit. Now, I do want to practice what I preach, so I want to give you all a physical example of drinking vinegar. I brought my vinegar for the day, a little tablespoon of vinegar. I brought my straw. Okay, so for you guys, here we go. Ooh. Okay. That'll wake you up. Okay, now, how we would do this, 10 minutes prior, right? We'll get into that in a little bit. So questions about timing. Timing vinegar. In the studies done on acetic acid and how it responds in our body to breaking down starches and sugar, it was found that it is the most optimal to consume at least 10 minutes prior to a meal consisting of heavy starches and heavy sugars. Okay? And you only need 1 tablespoon a day. You don't have to consume more than that. 1 tablespoon a day is enough. Okay? Now, if you have an aversion to vinegar or you just don't like vinegar, you have other options. Try different types of vinegars, as well as try lemon. Half a lemon, the juice squeezed out, will help substitute for that vinegar. Now, I do want to point out, lemons have citric acid, not acetic acid. Okay, citric acid is a little less powerful than acetic acid that you would get from vinegar. Okay, although it does have those positive properties of breaking down the starches and sugars, helping your muscles absorb glucose, and helping your body burn fat. Okay, so just want to point that out. Now, for those of y'all curious about snacking, those sweet treats, right? So, if the Cookie Monster here had prefaced his cookie snacking with a tablespoon of vinegar 10 minutes prior, his glucose spike would be a lot more level. But if he's just going out and eating all these cookies with no acetic acid in his stomach, his spike's going to be a lot larger. He's going to feel those effects: inflammation, tiredness, brain fog, right? We had a list earlier, okay? So, just something to keep in mind for when we're snacking, okay? Now, 2 more things before I leave you today. The first being tiny habits reminder, okay? Remember, tiny habits, we have our anchor moments. Anchor moments being your daily task and what you do throughout the day that you just do menially, right? You don't even have to think about it. We add our new tiny behavior onto that, whether it's waking up in the morning, getting dressed, brushing our teeth, getting our cup of coffee ready. We add that new tiny behavior in between. We sandwich it, okay? And then we celebrate the wins, right? Anybody have any dance parties this past week celebrating the wins? No? Nobody? WebEx, I'm counting on y'all to be my spice of life, okay? All right. Remember, guys, a baby step is still a step because success will lead to success, no matter how small. All right? Now, getting back to our order of eating, I always want to start and stop with this because it is the foundation of this method: fiber, protein, fat, starch, sugar. And here are some more awesome examples of what we just talked about, adding vinegar into our order, okay? So we see here somebody's snacking on a pretzel, or a bretzel in this case, and you see our glucose spike. And then we see them preface it with a vinegar salad, and we see that glucose spike cut in half, energy leveling out, okay? And then we even have over here cheeseburger and fries. Who doesn't enjoy those occasionally, right? And then we see a salad with vinegar before and how much that spike is cut down. Isn't that amazing? So, again, we're able to enjoy the things that we love, just becoming more aware of the order of how we eat. And now we have another habit to add into that order. Okay, here are some other cool examples with some mocktails and how even those affect our glucose levels in our body. And as always, I always want to encourage you guys, talk to your fam, okay? Make sure everybody's on the same page. We're all moving in the same direction. Let them know this is not a one-time fix or a diet or a fad. We're making lifestyle changes, right? We're in here for a long time, not just a good time. Pick out one or more of these strategies and apply it. So now we have order of eating, we have savory breakfast, and we have vinegar once a day. Okay? So, on your handout of those day-to-day journals, okay, or I call them reflection cards, we now have our second week, which is vinegar once a day. So, make sure you fill those out when you have time. They're super simple, easy to do. Okay? That'll help me get some feedback from you guys and your experience with these habits. All right? Okay. Now, before we end class, I would love to open up the floor for more Q&A. Any questions that we've had over the course of today's class or just in general? Oh. The question was, what kind of vinegar did I just drink? I just drank some apple cider vinegar. It's probably my favorite out of the vinegars if I had to choose. And it's also what I use if I'm making a salad dressing. I'll mix it with some olive oil and put some greens in there. The question was about vinegar capsules. She's asking if they're the same as drinking vinegar. Well, I'm going to preface this by saying I have not done a lot of research on the capsulized version of vinegar, but I do know it will be more powerful to consume vinegar in its raw form than to consume it in capsule form. And plus, it's not as fun. All right. Any other questions? Wetbags fam, what's up? Okay. Question was, what is the best time of day to consume vinegar? Okay. I like to say it's personal preference, excuse me. Okay. So if we're looking at our meals and we're looking at the starch and sugar content of our meals, if we can preface our heaviest starch meal with that vinegar, it'll be the most beneficial. Okay. But also, if time doesn't work out in that way, we can have it in the morning, or we can have it before lunch, or we can have it before dinner. It's really personal preference. Okay, question was, is it okay to just have straight vinegar? Is it better to take it straight than with water? No, there's no difference really. It's just cutting down the harshness of that acetic acid in the vinegar. So you get the same benefit. That's why we have multiple ways we can consume vinegar, but diluting vinegar with water will help it be less harsh. And then again, if you want to drink vinegar with straw, it'll help protect the enamel in your teeth. Awesome, you're on point. Okay, yes sir. So the question was, the lady who asked the previous question said she drank 2 tablespoons instead of 1. This gentleman asked if the amount matters. In this method, the recommended amount is the minimum. It's the minimum. Now, I personally don't want to drink more than 1 tablespoon of vinegar a day, but that's not to say that you won't still get the benefits of acetic acid from drinking 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Okay? Not saying one is better or one is worse. Okay, so question was, they understand how vinegar affects starches and sugars, but they also want to know, does it affect the fat? As there an example of eating burgers and fries after using vinegar in salad dressing prior to eating the burgers and fries. So as far as acetic acid goes, because depending on the food that you're consuming, has a lot of oils and grease in there, Okay, the acetic acid naturally is going to affect that. Now, if we're looking at omega-3 fats like avocados, nuts, and seeds, it's not going to have a detrimental effect on those, right? Just because of the chemical properties of acetic acid. So I would say yes, mostly because of everything else that is on the burger and how the fries are made, if that makes sense. So, question was, she's asking if the mother vinegar matters when it comes to selecting vinegars. Usually, in the process of making vinegar, a mother vinegar is added into it. So, that's not to say one is better or worse, but that's usually the common practice when it comes to creating vinegar. Now, you can create vinegar at home. There are awesome resources online if you guys are interested in making your own vinegar, and they mostly all contain adding a mother vinegar element. Mhm. Now, I do want to make one small disclosure, y'all. This habit is the only optional habit in this method, okay, when it comes to looking at the glucose method. Okay. Question was, most people on their breaks can't do 10 minutes prior to their meal. So, is there space to have vinegar in a longer duration prior to eating? Or what was the second question? Or a shorter time, drinking it right before. I would say your best bet would probably to be using one of the other methods of consuming vinegar, whether that's pickling something, a dressing, um, or or a different drink that's not just vinegar. Because if we're looking at the order of eating, consuming fiber, remember we don't have to wait after eating fiber to eat everything else in the meal. Does that make sense? Okay. So you're good. So if we say, for example, you don't have time to consume vinegar 10 minutes prior to eating your meal, right? Another great option would be having a salad or something pickled to eat right before you eat the rest of your food. Why? Because if we're following the order of eating, that's going to fall in the fiber category. And if we remember what we know about the order of eating, is you don't have to wait in between each of those molecules to eat the next.
So eat a lemon in the salad.
You could put the lemon on the salad.
And what about pickles?
You could just eat the pickles right before. Because pickles are cucumbers, right? And cucumbers are a non-starchy, non-sugar fiber.
And then what about a longer duration?
So, the longer duration, according to this method, there's a time span of 10 to 30 minutes you can have. Okay, but 30 minutes is the cap where acetic acid is at its lowest potency. Okay, in terms of how it benefits our body and digestion. Question was, they heard that vinegar helps with weight loss and digestion. Do I think that's true? Absolutely. Just knowing the properties of vinegar and the acetic acid and how it helps encourage our body to go into that fat burning mode, yes. And as far as digestion, if we can make sure we mitigate any type of effect from sugar and starch in our body that would cause a glucose spike, acetic acid checks that box, then yes, it also helps with digestion as well. So I'm a believer. Okay, question was, do they need to consume more water in order to balance the diuretic properties of vinegar? I would say it's always a safe bet to stay hydrated, especially when there's something that you're consuming that affects the hydration status in your body. Question was, do you only have to consume vinegar before starchy or sugary foods, or can you also consume it before other foods? I would say this is where intention comes into mind. So if we know what we're eating for the day, we can really schedule when the optimal time to consume that vinegar would be, if that makes sense, right? So it's not going to be a detriment to you to consume it before a normal meal. However, it will be more powerful to consume before a meal with lots of starch and lots of sugar. Or just starch and sugar in general. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. All right. Awesome, awesome. Appreciate you guys. A preview for this upcoming week. I'm excited. Not just because you get to talk about vegetables. All right. The crowd's kind of split on that. But we get our first guest speaker, okay? And a little bit of an interview orientation up here. So we'll have a couple of chairs, ask him some questions. So I encourage you guys, if you have any questions about this method or health in general, he is an awesome, awesome resource. And if you get those questions to me before next week, I'll make sure to prep him on those so we can cover those as well as we talk about this next healthy habit hack. Okay. And just to give you a preview of who he is, what he looks like, this is Brad Baldwin. He is 74 years old. He still works out, and he is probably healthier than I am. Okay. So it's never too late. And wellness is for everybody, which is really awesome and inspiring. So this is a little bit of a showcase of his health journey. All right. Thank you guys for coming today. Appreciate y'all. We love y'all, WebEx fam, and we'll catch you next week.